Welcome back to another explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this. Today we've got a really special story to share with you. It's a classic, super fun tale about a farmer, a baker, and a really important lesson that we can all use every single day. It's called A Pound of Butter, a story about honesty.
So have you ever wondered what actually happens when you try to trick someone? Maybe you thought you could pull a fast one, maybe bend the rules just a tiny bit, and nobody would ever notice? Well, keep that question right in the front of your mind as we go through today's story. Because as you'll see, tricky behavior sometimes has a funny way of bouncing right back to us.
Section 1. Meet the farmer and the baker. So imagine a simple, quiet town from a long time ago, where people just traded the things they made for the things they needed. And in this small town lived our two main characters, a hardworking farmer and a very busy baker. Every single day, the farmer would bring a beautiful, fresh pound of butter into town to sell to the baker. And in return, he'd buy a nice, warm 1-pound loaf of bread from that very same baker. It seemed like the perfect, totally fair trade, right? Just a pound for a pound. Section 2. A problem with the butter. Well, the peace in our little town didn't last forever. One day, the baker started to feel a little suspicious. He looked really closely at the block of butter the farmer gave him, and he thought to himself, this doesn't look quite big enough to be a whole pound. That suspicion really got the better of him. He decided to put the butter on a scale himself just to see if he was getting the right amount. And oh boy, he realizes it isn't the right amount. The butter actually weighed less than a pound. And the baker? He became incredibly angry because he felt like the farmer was purposefully tricking him out of his hard-earned money. Section 3. Taking it to court. The baker was literally so mad about being cheated that he didn't just want to talk to the farmer, he wanted to get the law involved. He marched the farmer right down to the courthouse so a wise judge could settle the whole shebang and punish the farmer for breaking the rules. Picture them standing there in the big, quiet courtroom. The judge looks down from his desk at the farmer and asks, did the farmer have a proper measuring tool to weigh the butter? Which, is a really great question, because if you're going to sell a pound of something to someone, you absolutely need a way to know exactly how much a pound is. The farmer looked up at the judge and gave a really honest answer. He said, Your Honor, I am primitive. Now, being primitive just means living simply, right? From an early time, not having modern or fancy tools. The farmer was gently explaining to the judge that he didn't have some standardized measuring cup or a fancy digital scale like we'd use in our kitchens today. But he wasn't completely without tools. He told the judge that while he didn't have a proper fancy measure, he did have a scale. A scale is just a simple tool used to compare the weight of two things by balancing them on opposite sides, kind of like a seesaw at the playground. If both sides have the exact same weight on them, the seesaw balance is perfectly level right in the middle. Section 4. The surprising truth. Okay, so the judge is trying to figure this giant puzzle out. He knows the farmer has a simple balancing scale, but absolutely no actual metal weights to tell him what a single pound is. So the judge asks him, then how do you weigh the butter? So how did the farmer weigh the butter? I really want you to think about this for a second. If you only had a balancing scale and you needed to measure exactly 1 pound of butter to give to the baker, but you had no little metal weights to use, what would you put on the other side of the scale? Any guesses on what the farmer did? Okay, here is the farmer's absolutely brilliant answer. He told the judge, every day when the baker brings the bread, I put it on the scale and give him the same weight in butter. Isn't that smart? He used the baker's very own 1-pound loaf of bread to balance the scale. He simply put the bread on one side and then piled his fresh butter on the other side until they balanced out perfectly. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive twist in our story. The farmer finished his explanation to the judge by saying, if anyone is to be blamed, it is the baker. Why? Well, because if the butter weighed less than a pound, it means the bread he used to measure it must have also weighed less than a pound. The baker had been secretly baking loaves of bread that were just too small. He was trying to cheat his customers, and without even realizing it, he ended up cheating himself. Section 5. The value of honesty. So the baker learned a very hard, very embarrassing lesson in that courtroom that day. And we can actually learn a tremendous amount from the baker's big mistake too. When we look at how this whole thing wraps up, the message we take away is just incredibly clear. There are two big lessons drawn straight from the heart of our story. First, in life, you get what you give.
And second, don't try and cheat others. The baker's trick acted exactly like a boomerang. He threw out a trick by baking smaller loaves of bread, and that trick came flying right back and hit him when he received less butter in return.
The simple truth is, honesty is always the best path. When we're truthful and fair with the people around us, we build trust and happiness. It's just the best way to treat others, and it ensures that we're treated fairly in return. I mean, if the baker had just been honest from the start and baked a true 1-pound loaf of bread, he would have received a full pound of butter and everyone would have been perfectly happy. So I'll leave you with this final, really important thought. How will you practice honesty today? Maybe it's telling the truth even when it's a little bit scary, or just making sure you're playing fair in a game with your friends. Keep the tricky baker and the clever farmer in mind the next time you have a choice to make. Thank you so much for exploring this wonderful story with me, and I absolutely can't wait to see you next time as we discover more amazing things together.